morning, ladies and gentlemen. Philip Newbury here with Ask the Expert. And joining me in the studio, we have Kevin Onizuk. He's branch manager with JG Wentworth Home Lending Incorporated. 113 Bullifonts Boulevard, Suite C, Williamsburg, Virginia. And is a great number. You can call him on if you need him. I'm sure you do. 757-220-5491. Now, also in the studio is our good friend Elaine VonCannon, Associate Broker, ABR, SRES, Notary, Team Leader, Residential and Commercial Property Manager with Coldwell Banker Traditions of Williamsburg. Find them on Ironbound Road. And here's the number for her. 757-229-9595. Okay, with that out of the way, Elaine and Kevin, what are we going to be talking about today on the show?
Well,
and Elaine, I'd like you to kick off because I did put Kevin first in the introduction, but I'd like to start you off with the show.
As you should. So thank you very much.
Ladies first.
That's right. Philip, today we're talking about riding the roller coaster. Is it a seller's market or is it a buyer's market?
The buyer's market. Oh, very interesting subject. So what is it, Elaine? You tell me first what you're seeing in the market.
Well, it is a roller coaster market right now. It is a very roller coaster market.
Yeah.
We just did the stats for what has, and we pulled it from the Williamsburg MLS, what has sold in James City County in Williamsburg in September compared to August. September is 60% down.
Really?
60%, yes. I knew it had stopped. Like, it's just like somebody suddenly said, I'm getting off at the stop, and there's nobody else on the bus. So my broker owner, John Wilson, he's a stats person. So once a month, he'll pull the stats. And I said, John, I need you to pull these stats. Something is really screwy. He pulled the stats, and lo and behold, I was right. We are 60% off. Because I check the hot sheets every day in 3 MLSs. I check them in the Williamsburg, in Rain, and in the co-op, which is Richmond and Chesapeake Bay. Because I belong to all of those. I check the hot sheets. I check what has sold, what has new listings, what is expired, and there's more expireds coming up than anything else.
Wow. Well, Kevin, what are you seeing right now in the market? Must be pretty much the same, I should think. I don't know.
It's pretty much the same, Philip. As Elaine mentioned, it's a bit of a roller coaster, but not all roller coasters have to be scary. We all know it's Hollow Scream time at Busch Gardens, so those are pretty scary this time of year. But in the housing market, it can be an opportunity. So someone that is looking to purchase, if sales are down, that means there's less competition to find that great, perfect house. In the mortgage world on our side, rates are slowly increasing. A lot of that has to do with economic recovery. As we've all seen in the news, the economy is getting better. Rates went way down when the economy went way down. It was basically an attempt to have recovery in the economy to keep housing going. A lot of it was artificially pushed down to more affordable levels. But as the economy recovers, rates are going to start to normalize. Right. So rates are still historically very low, keeping affordability historically very low. And if you look at it, demand has got to be coming back because I just saw on the news this morning that we have the most job openings ever in the United States. So there is a hunger for people to take employment. We have the lowest unemployment rate in 49 years, which means people are back to work. They have jobs. Wages are increasing. That means people are going to feel more comfortable in buying a home. Inventory's coming back a little bit, as Elaine mentioned. With sales down, that means there's more to pick from out there. So for 2018, if you're a buyer, this is probably one of the best opportunities to go out and find something, get a good deal, and actually have some choices versus just having to, take the one or two houses that are still listed out there.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from Elaine, it is a real roller coaster. Elaine, what do you say to your sellers?
I tell my sellers, in fact, Philip, that's very interesting. I went 2 weeks ago up to Quinton, which Quinton is part Henrico, part New Kent. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Just like Williamsburg is part York County, part James City, part, the city of Williamsburg. So anyway, I went up there and I met with this couple. They had a house and they had it rented with someone else, and the tenants sort of messed it up a little bit, but they wanted to sell it. And so, I talked to them about it. Then they called me and they said, let's go ahead and list it now. This is 2 weeks later. I said, no. I said, I'm not going to list it till you do what we discussed, because you do not want to put your house on the market unless you are ready to hit the ground running. Because if you put it on the market and it's not, and you're ongoing doing stuff on it, you waste time, because that one buyer that really might want it will come by. And buyers, as Kevin will know, they have, they're like horses. They have blinders on them on either side, and unless they're an investor. And it's hard for them to see beyond the blinders.
Yeah.
And buyers have a lot of expectations now. Most buyers, I would say 90% of them do not want to do, and Kevin can verify this, he probably has very few 203 rehab loans coming out. Most buyers do not want to go in and do anything. They want to go in, unpack, hang up their pictures, and call it a day.
Yeah.
And if you do not hit the ground running, the sellers, that's a problem with a lot of these expireds when I go look at them. They were not prepared to be on the market. They are not prepared. Now, I'm going to sell it as is. So you're going to sell it as is, and they're going to come in low, and you're really going to lose money than what it would cost for you to get it ready to put on the market. And we're talking landscaping outside of the house as well as the inside. I'm not saying you have to go in and put granite countertops in, tile backsplash or anything like that, but clean. Yeah. A carpet that doesn't had 4 or 5 dogs on it that had little accidents here and there, and 10 kids that spilt everything instead of keeping it on their plate. I mean, we're talking about getting the house so it's clean and it's functionally ready.
Yeah. I understand.
Yeah, Elaine, you had mentioned renovation mortgages, renovation opportunities.
Yes.
I think you'd even mentioned the 203K mortgage.
It's a good time.
It is a good time to consider those, but you're right. A lot of folks are a little hesitant, especially first-time buyers, which is an important part of this market. They go in and they want to see themselves living in that home. If they do have some imagination and creativity and some forward thinking, there are a lot of houses out there that do have some condition issues or may not be exactly what they need. There are mortgage programs to help out with that if the seller's not willing to make those repairs in advance, or say if you're buying a foreclosure, the bank isn't willing to make repairs and improvements to that property. So renovation mortgages allow folks to go in and purchase the home, often with very low and even sometimes no down payment options, and put money aside for those improvements. So say there's some condition issues, or let's say even it's a 3-bedroom and you need a 4th bedroom. You can do a mortgage where you purchase and add a bedroom, do kitchen renovations, whatever it is to make that house your perfect home. And we can do that with first-time buyers. We can do it with veterans. The VA mortgage program, we have an option where you can do that. So with some forward-thinking, creativity, and an open mind, that does certainly give a buyer a lot more options. It can help a seller sell a property that's less than perfect, but the majority of people do want something that is move-in ready and is what they would want it to be to live there.
Right. Well, Kevin, so if a seller comes to you to see about a payoff on their mortgage, do you ever tell them to rent, bring money to the table, sit tight? What do you look at when this happens?
That's a great question, Philip. A seller when they look to get a payoff on their mortgage, if they're selling and moving on to their next thing, they're going to want to look at what equity they have. On the plus side, values have been increasing. So if they've been in the home for a while, or if they put a decent amount of down payment down, they should have a bit of equity in the property so they can sell and at least cover their costs, maybe even make a few dollars on the way out. But they may not want to do that, or they may not have that equity if they've purchased it recently. We all know we have a lot of military folks here that come and go on a regular basis. Maybe somebody moved in, purchased, and then the military decided to move them quicker than they expected.
Yeah.
So they do have options if they don't have that equity, or if they just really like that house. Another thing that I see a lot with military folks is they love this area. They want to come back here, but they're going to be stationed somewhere else and maybe retire back here so they can keep the property. So sellers always have options. As you mentioned, they can just pay off the mortgage and move on to their next thing. But there's a great rental market here. So if they want to keep that property, whether they want it or they just don't have the capability to sell it right now, you can rent it out. There's a high demand for rental properties. Elaine does a lot of property management and can certainly help out with that as well. And we give credit for that rental income towards the purchase of the next house when we're looking at affordability calculations.
How much of it do you give them for credit? Because I'm sure that's going to be a question that you'll get.
That depends on the mortgage program. Generally it's about 75% of the rental income as an overall answer. And we don't really, if you're just vacating the property, we don't count it as income, but we'll use it to remove or wash out the existing mortgage payment for qualifying for your next house. So yeah, that's a great question. But also if you're lacking equity, want to sell, as you mentioned, Philip, you can bring money to the table. If you're $5,000 short, you can bring that $5,000. Most people don't want to do that, but it's an option. If you need to sell and move, you can certainly, you can bring that cash to the table. So sellers do have options. If you need to move for some reason and, want to keep that house or sell it, there's options out there that will help facilitate all of that.
Well, thanks,
And
Kevin.
Kevin brought up an interesting point, Philip. Not with just the military around here, but Williamsburg has always been in the top 10 for retirement.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So you have life-changing events that happens to folks, and they may need to go health reasons. That with us baby boomers, we're booming on along here. And
Yeah, we don't get any younger, that's for sure.
But the other option is not acceptable. So, but anyway, they might have health issues. They might have to move near their children.
Well, they might have to go into assisted living or
assisted
whatever.
living. Yeah, or they need to downsize.
Yeah.
They're rattling around a 4,000 square foot house by themselves.
No.
So there's a lot, and a lot of them have equity. So my question to Kevin is there a program out there that the seller can have a second mortgage after the mortgage company has the first mortgage to allow them to sell their house?
So you're asking if someone has a house to sell, can they get a second mortgage?
If it's paid off, can the seller be the holder of the second?
Yeah, sure. You could do that. Do a seller second. The seller would have to have the equity in there,
And it be paid off.
right? Yeah. There's definitely some creative things that you could do where the seller could facilitate that. Although if the seller has that equity, then they probably necessarily wouldn't have to do that. And there's something also I hear called a land contract. I don't even know the details of that. I know a real estate agent on the peninsula that does some of those, where it's kind of a purchase, but it's not exactly paying off the existing stuff. So there are creative options out there.
Yeah, I know about those land contracts. I would not do those. A land contract can get pretty sticky.
Okay, so Elaine, what do you tell your buyers in this roller coaster of a market?
I tell my buyers, first of all, you have to be prepared that you may say, well, I looked it up and I know what they paid for it. You might know what they're paid for it, but you don't know if there's an equity line on it because that does not show up when you go on and look at the property.
Really?
And yes, an equity line won't show up a lot of times. And right, Kevin?
Yeah, it could be an equity line, could be other liens and judgments on the property. You don't always know right away, and sometimes the person who owns the house
Yeah.
doesn't know.
Yeah, until you do an in-depth title search.
Right.
You don't know. So I tell my buyers, don't assume, we know how that word is, do not assume that the seller has all this money, they're going to make all this money. You don't know what's been going on behind the scenes.
No.
You
No,
know,
you
at
don't.
all.
No.
I tell my buyers to make sure that they are ready. They talk to a lender. They talk to Kevin. Let him go through their finances. Because I've just had one about 4 months ago. Okay? Look good on paper when you first call. Credit score, everything. Hadn't filed taxes, though, since 2011.
Yeah.
Didn't tell nobody till the lender says, I need your taxes. Oh, well, I haven't filed them. Well, can you file them this year? Oh, well, since 2011. You know, it would be nice to tell somebody. I just gave a funny face. It would be nice to tell somebody that they had not filed their taxes. So you have to have your taxes filed.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just wait till the last minute. You have to make sure you don't go out and purchase a day before closing a car, a boat, a mobile home, a RV, anything like that. No big purchases. You have to make sure you don't hide your money under your mattress in a tin can, you know, or keep
don't?
it in your shoe. No, because
Well, I knew I'd been doing something wrong.
because lenders like to see a paper trail.
Yeah.
Because for them, they don't know if you're laundering money. And that's what it
Yes.
looks like.
Yeah, I
like
guess it
suddenly
would.
you have, say you have 10,000 in your account, all right? Suddenly your account shows up with 45,000 deposit. Now, where did you get that money?
Yeah.
Oh, it was under my bed. Really? You know, it's sort of hard for Kevin to convince the underwriters the money just showed up under somebody's bed in a shoebox or a stocking hung by the mantle. So,
But it's all right at Christmas.
yes, very early Christmas. You have to be, the buyers need to do their due diligence.
Yeah.
Make sure they're ready. They need to drive the neighborhoods to see if they really, and drive it maybe in the morning, in the evening, on a weekend or something, to see if it's the kind of neighborhood that they want to live in.
Yeah.
Don't do an offer on a house and suddenly you say, well, I don't like this because I found out 4 blocks away they have a police facility or SWAT team target range, like New Kent. Remember that thing that just went through?
Yes.
So, you know, the buyers have to do
Yeah.
the due diligence. They can't put the
Well,
monkey
yes,
on
you
my
gotta
back
do a
or
little bit of
Kevin's back.
homework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they have to go and do their due diligence.
Yeah. Of course.
And when they do that, then they're more of a prepared buyer, and Kevin can work with them a lot easier than all these surprises, like surprise party, no taxes since 2011.
Yeah. All right, Kevin, how do you advise your buyers?
I'd say right now in this market, I advise them pretty much as in any market. You know, from my side, we're always looking at the same basic things to get somebody qualified for a mortgage. We're looking at, do you pay your bills on time? Have you in general? It doesn't have to be perfect, but overall, we want to see it's pretty good. We're going to look at affordability. Do you have a good source of stable, reliable income? And is the new mortgage payment affordable based on your current income and other bills? We pretty much just look at what shows up on credit cards, car loans, that type of thing. And what I advise my buyers right now from the mortgage side as well is now is still a good time to buy. Rates are still at historic lows, keeping affordability good, but rates will likely continue to rise. Housing prices will continue to rise, I think, especially in our area. I think we are sometimes even a bit unique and thankfully insulated from some of the things that happen in other areas of the country. I think that the demand for housing is going to continue to increase, especially on the peninsula because of some of the job opportunities. I think Newport News Shipbuilding is looking for like thousands of
believe
people,
so.
skilled
Yeah.
labor.
Yeah.
You know, so and they're hunting across the country and trying to bring people in.
Yeah.
All those people are going to need housing, whether it's purchase or renting.
Right.
we all know the rules of supply and demand. As the demand keeps increasing and they're not building houses as fast as people are moving here, it's all going to get more expensive.
Well,
so if you're thinking about buying anytime soon, now is a great time to do it. There's a little bit more inventory out there. I tell folks when they're out looking, be patient. The house for you will show up. I was working with a first-time home buyer just last week that she found a house on Zillow, of course. It was either Zillow or Trulia that she fell in love with from the pictures, went out to see it, and turns out it was already sold, and the pictures were several years old and not an accurate reflection of the house currently looked. She was heartbroken. I said, don't worry about it. Number one, don't rely on Zillow and Trulia. Rely on your local real estate agent, your local realtor. Be patient. When you are meant to find a house, it will be there for you. Yeah. Just keep looking, keep the faith. Your perfect match will be out there.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Now, we had a listener email a question in, and I will ask both of you to address it. I'm going to ask Kevin first, and then Elaine. Here we go. I'm self-employed, and I have a hard time in getting a mortgage. What can I do?
Philip, that's a great question. First thing they can do is call me, Kevin Onizuk.
Of course.
They can reach me on my cell phone, 757-645-8996. You can call or text me anytime. I may not answer anytime, but if I miss you, I will certainly call back. But when you are a self-employed individual, we look at you very similarly to qualifying anybody else. As I mentioned, affordability. But we have to document your affordability as a self-employed individual a little differently. If you are a traditional employee of a company, you get a paycheck, pay stub, W-2 at the end of the year. You may be salary or hourly. That's very easy to figure out. As a self-employed individual, you've got tax returns. So that's what we need to see. So we're going to look at your tax returns for the last 2 years. If you're a 1099 employee, like an independent contractor working for someone, it may be like a company, a significant company, but if you're an independent contractor, that's considered self-employed as well. So we're going to take a look at your tax returns. You may say, hey, I made $200,000 last year, and that may be what you claimed on your 1099 or as your gross from self-employment. But you also had business expenses, and most self-employed individuals will have a good tax professional helping them to maximize their tax deductions, as we shall say. That's been a bit in the news lately about some of the United States leadership who has maximized their tax deductions, but it's what happens. When you are self-employed, you have expenses, and you take those expenses out of your income. As a mortgage person, we want to know what your net personal income is to pay your personal bills and this mortgage. So we're going to use the income after your deductions. So if you have a great tax person that wiped out all of your income, that's great for saving you money on taxes. And I'm sure it was all completely true and legitimate. But from the mortgage side, you don't have income for qualification. So we're going to look at the taxes and average what they have made as their net profit over the last 2 years. Some things we can add back in, like folks will take depreciation for an item they bought. That's not a real cost, so we'll give them credit for that. So basically, long story short, for self-employed people, we dig into the tax returns, we use the income that's there. And back to the market, very recently, there are some alternative options for self-employed individuals. For many, many years, back in the heyday, really, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a mortgage, and self-employed people, we just let them tell us what their income was and we used it. Then that all went away, and then we only use tax returns. Now we're back to getting some additional options. For example, we have a program where we will look at the personal and business bank statements for the last 12 months. And as they've made deposits, we'll count the deposits as their income versus using tax returns. Now, that's not a traditional mortgage. That's going to be more expensive in rates and costs. But for self-employed individuals out there that do not claim a ton of money on taxes, there are now some options coming back into the market. So if you're self-employed, have some questions, give me a shout. We can kind of go over your financial situation and see what creative options we might have.
Okay, well, thank you, Kevin. Elaine, would you like to add a comment on this?
Yes, because with the self-employment, Kevin, like you said, you use your bank statements, right? So they say they're going to pay 10%, 12%, which is still reasonably low considering what the market used to be at one point. So when they file taxes again, they can take the interest off, correct?
The interest from their
The
mortgage?
Yeah, the higher interest mortgage.
That would be my understanding. I know there's been some
Yeah.
changes to tax code, so anybody listening, please consult your tax advisor for full details.
The diplomat.
I believe in some. Oh, I say that so many times because I've been trained to not give tax advice. And there's been a lot of changes recently to taxes and what you can claim for deductions. So I believe there are some mortgage tax credits still available for a lot of folks that can file. So yes, if you are paying more in interest, you probably can take that as a tax deduction going forward.
So our self-employed people are not completely penalized for being self-employed because they still have this option. So they're taking more interest off of their taxes.
Yeah. So your net cost after you've saved on taxes certainly, is lower. Just as a caveat, I don't know if I mentioned this, we do need a 2-year history on self-employed people pretty much across the board, regardless of what type of program that we are using. We want to see that they're at least a bit established in that line of work, in that self-employment.
So, Kevin, my question to you, because when I will tell this to my self-employed people, how do they prove that they've been in business for a long time?
Generally use 2 years business licenses. That's a pretty good one. Or we get a letter from their CPA, basically confirming that they have been self-employed in the same line of work for 2 years or more.
Oh, okay. Or their taxes would show that.
Yes, if we're qualifying them based off tax returns,
not
then
based
yes.
on just to show proof that they were filing as self-employed.
Correct. Yeah, tax returns definitely. Yeah, if we're using the tax returns, that's easy. We typically don't ask for much beyond that because we've seen on the tax returns and we verify that the tax returns they provided us were legitimate.
Okay.
We don't believe anybody nowadays.
I want to thank Elaine and Kevin for another Ask the Expert, and I hope this has been a help to our listeners. Be sure to keep your radio tuned to FM 93.5 The Berg and WMEG AM 740 to find out when the next thrilling installment of Ask the Expert will be broadcast. So until next time, this is Philip Newbury. Have yourself a wonderful day. Now back to the regular programming, and as always, cheers.